Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another 4 p.m. Bible study. My name is Jim Schaefer, and I share with you every Tuesday and Thursday live on my Facebook channel. And then, of course, it's placed there for individuals to watch after the fact and on my YouTube channel. I'm a retired pastor and Bible teacher, and it is my joy to be able to share with you each and every week. Now, we are in the middle of a series entitled Divine Disruption. So far in our series, we have focused on how the birth of Jesus was a divine disruption. But I think it's only appropriate that we jump forward in the life of Christ to his crucifixion and resurrection. Since we're entering into the time of Easter, I thought it was only appropriate that we take a few lessons to look at the disruptive nature of these events. In today's lesson, we are going to be looking particularly at the idea of Jesus's triumphal entry into the city of Jerusalem. Now, I want you to understand that the triumphal entry was a powerful and a disruptive event. It involved crowds of cheering people. While many cheered Jesus' arrival, their expectations clashed with his true purpose. Rather than a military king, Jesus came to offer eternal peace and salvation. Now, the religious leaders were disturbed by his presence. Their rebuke of Jesus and his disciples was based upon their fear of the Romans. The stones that were along the side of the road themselves bore witness to this extraordinary event. Now, I think it's important for us to realize that the Bible doesn't refer to this event as the triumphal entry. It simply tells us the story of Jesus entering into the city of Jerusalem. Now, we have gone through mankind and have renamed it the Triumphal Entry. And I think it's a good title. We don't really know when it took place, but sometime early in the ancient world, they adopted this idea of the Triumphal Entry. Let's take a quick look and see who has joined us here today. We got a number of people already watching. I see Charlene. Charlene, it is nice to see you. Barbara B. is here live today. Robin Sharkey, Michelle Woods, my wife is here as well. There are, I believe, several others that I don't see his name yet. If you are here, please just give us a little nod. Let me know that you're watching. If you're watching after the fact or even watching the YouTube version, please place a comment. I love to respond to the comments that you make. And so I encourage you to do just that. Now, today, we are going to look at all four of the gospel accounts. All four gospel writers write about this event. Matthew chapter 21, Mark chapter 11, Luke chapter 19, and John chapter 12. Now, before you get too excited, I will not read all four of those passages. What I will do instead is I have prepared a conglomeration of all four of those into a single account, taking the differences in each account and placing them together without repeating the similar items. So let's take a look at the account. We're going to start with the book of Matthew. Matthew's gospel says, "The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd." Now, please take note of the highlighted words in these passages because they constitute the thrust of where I'm going to be heading during our time together. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Palm branches, hence the name of Palm Sunday, where we celebrate the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. Then Luke picks up the narrative and says, when he came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles that they had seen. Matthew then picks up the gospel account and he says, the crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed. Please note that there are two crowds that are mentioned here, those that are in front of Jesus and those that are following Jesus. And they all are shouting. Should have highlighted that word. Here's what they're shouting. Hosanna, which means saved, to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. John adds, blessed is the King of Israel. Please take note of that. Luke says, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. And then we have in Mark, blessed is the coming kingdom of our Father. Hosanna in the highest. Luke will then pick up our story, and he will tell us about the Pharisees. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. Pause here for just a moment. This idea here that Jesus, as he approaches the city, pauses and he weeps over the city. That's really not in keeping with the idea of a triumphal entry, is it? But it shows the heart of Jesus. When he sees the unbelief of the people there, when he sees how far they have fallen from what God expected or wants of them, he weeps over them. Matthew then picks up the account, and Matthew says, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred. Divine disruption, folks. And they asked, who is this? The crowds answered, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. John's gospel then adds this. Now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. The idea here is that many of these people that have gathered for the triumphal entry are those who have seen what Jesus has been able to do, including those who saw Lazarus raised from the dead. Verse 18, many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, went out to meet him. So the Pharisees said to one another, see, this is getting us nowhere. Look at how the whole world has gone after him. There's the idea again of a divine disruption. The whole world has gone out after him. Well, I want to look at a couple of things. There's a few items that jump out at me in this particular passage. The first thing that I want to note, and I want for you to take note of, is the crowds. Now, it's not just a crowd, but it seems to be multiple crowds. The Greek term that is used there is a word oklos. Oklos. It carries the meaning of a crowd or a mob or a multitude. It can even mean a group of armed guards. What we're looking at here, I believe, is a rowdy collection of people. These are not people that have simply gathered around a parade route and are standing with their hands in their pockets and watching Jesus as he goes by. No, this is a rambunctious group of people. This is a group of people that believe he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. They believe he's the one that's going to free them from the Roman occupation. They are convinced that he is the Messiah, and religious fervor is at an all-time high. Now, the text tells us that there's at least two crowds. One that goes before Jesus and is laying down their garments and the palm branches, making a makeshift red carpet, as it were. And a second group of people that are following Jesus, that are singing his praises and rejoicing as he rides along the road. I think we could make a case for a third crowd, and that would be the 12 disciples. We know that all of the disciples are there and are witnessing this event. I believe there's also a fourth crowd that the text makes mention of, and that is a group of religious leaders and Pharisees. These individuals look on with disdain and a certain amount of fear, according to Luke's account at any rate. The reason for their fear and the reason they wanted Jesus to rebuke his disciples and to tell them to shut up was because of the presence of a fifth group that we don't often think about, the Roman soldiers. Now, the text itself doesn't make mention of the Roman soldiers, but I don't think that should be an indication to us that they weren't there. The Roman soldiers would have been out and visible because of the upcoming Passover feast, which historically was a time of Jewish rebellion. The Romans were well aware of this, and they would have brought additional troops into the city of Jerusalem. The Romans were concerned about maintaining peace and preventing any disturbance during this period of time. Estimates suggest that the city's population would triple during times of festivals, reaching anywhere between 75,000 and 150,000 people. They would have stationed troops all around the city to ensure order and to prevent any potential riots or rebellions. Of particular concern to the Romans would have been the road that was leading into the city of Jerusalem, the very road that Jesus is on. Now, I want you to see in this lesson the tensions that must have existed during this event. One of the reasons that I choose the Bible study topics that I choose, like divine disruption, is because it allows us to take a look at the events through a different lens. I had never really noticed the disruptive nature of the Triumphal Entry until I began to view it from this particular point of view. There are a lot of crowds there this day, and the presence of the soldiers is part of the reason that the Pharisees are reacting with such fear. Tell the disciples, tell the crowd to pipe down. Don't you see what's going to happen? If you don't, the Romans are going to come down on all of us. That's their concern. The Romans were concerned about appeasing the crowd. They were concerned about the religious festivals creating this atmosphere of hate and rebellion. It's one of the reasons why at the time of the Passover, the Romans would release a prisoner every year. Remember the story of Barabbas? They offer to let Jesus go or Barabbas, and the crowd will choose Barabbas. The second thing that I want you to see is the loud voices. Now, in John 12, verse 19, we read, "So the Pharisees said to one another, 'See, this is getting us nowhere. Look at how the whole world has gone after him.'" You know, this is their concern. Everybody is talking about Jesus. Everybody is wanting to see Jesus. They are having trouble keeping this idea of this Jewish king under wraps. And their fear is what the Romans might do. Now, the triumphal entry, as we've already pointed out, takes place shortly after the resurrection of Lazarus from the dead. It's the main reason that the crowds of people have gathered to watch as Jesus enters into Jerusalem. It's the reason for the palm branches and the reasons for the shouts of Hosanna or Jesus saves. Luke tells us in chapter 19, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully. And that term joyfully there is a Greek term chairo, which means to rejoice exceedingly. This is not just a mild clap. This is a group of people that are excited by what is taking place. The text goes on to say, to praise God in loud voices. You'll notice that I have given you the Greek term for loud voices, megas phone. Wonder how many of you have figured out what English term we get from this Greek term. Go ahead, put your answer down in the comments. I think you can see that it's the idea of megaphone. All right? It carries with it the idea that they are extremely loud and rambunctious. Because of the miracles they have seen, they are rejoicing. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Now, the crowds of people, combined with the loud voices, proclaiming a new king that comes in the name of the Lord, it must have been a nightmare for the Pharisees and the Romans. It's no wonder that this event will spur on the decision to put Jesus to death. The whole world has gone after him. Well, the third thing that I want you to notice is how Jesus enters into the city. He's riding on a donkey, on a colt. Riding on a donkey was a deliberate choice by Jesus. He could have simply walked into Jerusalem, but he chose instead to ride a donkey. Why? Now, we know that if he had ridden a war horse, that would have symbolized military might and conquest. The donkey, on the other hand, represented humility and peace. By riding on a donkey, Jesus was conveying that his kingdom was not of this world, that his mission was a spiritual mission, a spiritual redemption, rather than a political revolution. Most importantly, Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey to fulfill the Old Testament scriptures. Take a look at it. It's found in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. And it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Jesus intentionally chooses to fulfill this prophecy. He is making his claim right here, right now, that he is the king, the Messiah that they have looked forward to. His riding into Jerusalem on a donkey was a profound declaration of his divine kingship, his mission of salvation, and his willingness to lay down his life for humanity. I want you to notice one more idea. The idea of a triumphal entry was a Roman idea. It was an idea that was rooted in ancient Roman culture. The emperor or a victorious general would return from a successful military campaign, and they would enter into the city of Rome riding in a chariot pulled by 4 horses, along with a parade of prisoners that they had captured and a display of all of the treasures that they had captured. It was called the Roman triumph. It was the highest honor that the Romans could give to a military leader, or often the emperor himself. Here is Jesus. I want you to catch this. Here is Jesus appropriating. My first word there was stealing. And my wife told me I could not say Jesus was stealing, okay? But he's appropriating this Roman idea right smack in the middle of the Roman Empire, the height of Gaul, that he would lay claim to this Roman idea. Well, by all accounts, the entry of Jesus into the city of Jerusalem was a disruptive event. God was getting the attention of a lost and sinful world. I hope, as a result of this brief Bible study, that you better understand the dynamics that were taking place as Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem just 1 week prior to his crucifixion. He disrupted our world for you and for me. His triumphal entry was, without a doubt, an example of divine disruption. Aren't you glad that he disrupted this world for us? Hey, thank you so much for watching. I do deeply appreciate each and every one of you. We will continue our study on Thursday. We're going to look in particular at the disruptive nature of the betrayal of Jesus Christ. We're going to see more crowds. We're going to see more moms. We're going to see more disruption. I hope you'll join us 4 o'clock on Thursday live on my Facebook channel. I do hope you'll also take the opportunity to check out my YouTube channel. The address is there on the screen. You can find on Facebook. I have very often placed links to the channel, and you can see all of the Bible studies that I have done recently, all of the former lessons in this series, as well as in the Fear Not series. I have been downloading all of the Bible studies from our Glimpses of Jesus series. I'm in the middle right now of downloading the lessons concerning glimpses of Jesus in the books of history. And I've got just a handful of those left. Let me make sure how many I have left to do. I have already downloaded 5 out of the 9. So we have 4 more to go in that series, and then we'll continue on looking at our glimpses of Jesus in the Torah. But those lessons, especially the most recent ones, the books of history, have all been re-edited with graphics included, text included. I hope you'll take a look at the YouTube channel. I appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all on Thursday. God bless.